After 118 years, 2,620 games, we finally said goodbye to our home of Tottenham Hotspur, White Hart Lane. We discuss Sunday's emotional farewell victory and preview Leicester to come on this week's e-Spurs podcast.
Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Tottenham.
Hi guys, welcome back for another hour of talking all things Tottenham Hotspur. You can of course follow us across all the usual social media platforms. We're on Twitter and Instagram at e_Spurs. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/e-Spurs page. We're also on YouTube, Pinterest and Tumblr. And for all the links to all e-Spurs platforms, you can head to our website of www.e-Spurs.com. On the e-Spurs podcast tonight, we'll be discussing Sunday's farewell victory at White Hart Lane. We'll be taking your questions for our panel as always, and we will be previewing Leicester City away on Thursday evening. But before we talk all things Tottenham Hotspur tonight, let's introduce the panel taking us through the next hour. I'm pleased to say first up, making his debut, we've got the producer of the Football Republic and Spurred on TV, Barnaby Slater, joining us. Barnaby, how are you?
I'm really well, thanks mate. How are you doing?
Very well, very well. Still buzzing, I think, over yesterday. I'm sure we're going to get onto that in a minute. I'm pleased to say we've got back on the show Crackers from last week. Crackers, how are you doing?
I'm all great, mate. Thanks for asking me back.
Pleasure. I'm also delighted to say we've got on the show BBC journalist Chris Slegg joining us. Chris, how are you?
Yeah, really good to be back again, Ricky. And yeah, just still getting over the emotion of yesterday. What an occasion.
Oh, I'm sure we all are, Chris. It's I think 12 hours later it still hasn't, the formalities of it hasn't sunk in. And finally, last but not least, we've got Jason back on the show. Jace, how are you?
Good to be back, mate. I'm jealous of all you lucky ones that were there yesterday.
Oh, yeah. It was an unbelievable occasion. We're going to come first to you, Barnaby. I mean, what a farewell at the Lane. The right result, a beautiful, beautiful ceremony at the end. Can you put into words just how yesterday was for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was actually, I'm not one to get emotional too easily, but it was surprising. I don't know whether it was my hangover from Saturday night or the emotion of leaving the Lane, but a few tears were certainly shed, that's for sure. And I think I tweeted it from Spurred On yesterday, but it just came over me at the time that thank God we've got Mauricio Pochettino now, because that could have been such a kind of damp squib if we had a bad team at the moment and we weren't doing as well as we were. And it just seemed to all fit together perfectly. Beating Manchester United, something we never used to do, having the rainbow at the end, the fans on the pitch, just finishing second for the first time for God knows how many years. Just a brilliant day all round.
It really was. And like you said there, Barnaby, Pochettino is the first Spurs manager to oversee consecutive home wins over Manchester United in the Premier League. Coming to you, Crackers, I mean, that in itself shouldn't be understated. Just how special was that send-off for you yesterday?
I keep saying to people, it was the absolute definition of perfect. And I've been saying, if you made a Hollywood movie of that yesterday, people would come out of the cinema feeling 10 feet tall, but saying to each other, it was lovely, but it weren't really real, was it? You know, it was a bit sort of overdone. Nothing could ever be that perfect, but it was reality yesterday. It was just, that's how good it was. It was just simply perfect. The tone and everything. It wasn't overly schmaltzy or overdone or garish. It was tasteful. It was understated, but just everything. I mean, even down to the pitch invasion was polite. There was no police on the pitch. Yeah. And, you know, first, straight off the bat, I've got to say, Paul Coyte, what a job that man done.
Legend.
Yesterday, when he took to the mic to clear the pitch, and, you know, his well-chosen words, and he was polite, and, you know, Tottenham down the years has been known for its one or two, idiots that have made it out the village over to the Lane. And I mean, you know, nobody, just everybody went back to the stands and just behaved themselves impeccably. It was just perfect.
Yeah, I think there'll be an argument now for Paul to have a job at crowd control, let alone PA announcement. It was absolutely brilliant. Coming to you, Chris, with all the books that I say you've wrote on the Lane, the occasion itself, did it fulfil everything you hoped it would be at that time.
Oh, completely. As Cracker said there, Hollywood movie, and the result just adds to it, because Tottenham don't do those kind of endings. You know, I was kind of convinced in that pessimistic way we're going to have our first home defeat of the season and the very last game ever to be played at White Hart Lane. I just convinced myself it was going to be 1-0. But, you know, to even be coming home again from another game at the Lane this season and not having seen this lot, I can't comprehend that we haven't come home disappointed from the Lane once this season, in terms of, you know, that feeling of a losing disappointment. Okay, we were disappointed in the Leicester game not to have won it. The Liverpool game were the only other game that we dropped points where really we deserved to lose that game, so we were lucky to get a point. But to think that we have not left the Lane having seen us lose once all season is just, I can't really believe it. It's just been the perfect goodbye to the place. And yeah, the whole thing yesterday was amazing. The ceremony at the end for me, I mean, I am one to get emotional very easily, and I did find it very emotional. It was just amazing from start to finish, and to see all those guys on the pitch again. You know, Terry Dyson, who helped me in the book I've written, talking about his memories of the double in 1961 and being the only player to score a hat-trick against Arsenal for Tottenham, seeing him come on, and just the legends from all different eras that would have meant something to each and every one of us in the Lane. I met a chap before the game. He went to his first game in 1945. It was 1946 actually, against Brentford, and has, you know, been a regular ever since, and all the amazing things he's seen. He was one of the people who went onto the pitch after we won the title against Sheffield Wednesday in 1961. Not many people, you know, have been at the Lane and seen Tottenham with a title-winning team, and he was so emotional yesterday as well. And that's something I found as well. People just, you kind of go to football with your friends and in your cliques, but yesterday everyone was talking to everyone, sharing their memories with everyone, becoming friends with other people. It was amazing to be a part of. I will never ever. I'll never forget the first time I saw the Lane, and I will never ever forget a single moment of yesterday. It was perfect. Yeah,
a real day for the Spurs family. And Jace, coming to you, obviously you're back in Thailand now, so you didn't unfortunately have the pleasure of being at the Lane yesterday. From what you saw TV-wise, the coverage, did it do it justice for you, the event itself?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously local TV aired the game, but then they were able to switch it over to Sky Half-Game and to see that Legends Parade and all those names coming out that we just know so well. And I suppose the only surprise in that was that there was no Birkinshaw, Martin Yeo and Redknapp that were obviously all in the ground, and I don't quite know why they weren't part of that, but it came across really, really well. And, you know, I wasn't there yesterday, but enough to have been 377 times I still feel like I've had my fun for sure.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely tremendous. And Barney, we're going to try and bring it back to the game. I know it's difficult because of the emotion of yesterday. Tottenham Hotspur midfielder Victor Wanyama scored his first goal at the Lane and last ever at White Hart Lane this season. Just how impressed have you been by him as a player? He has been the definition of consistency, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has, and I think it's fair to say that when we signed him at the beginning of the season, although I think we all felt he was a good signing, we wondered how he was going to fit in, because Eric Dyer did such a brilliant job in front of the back four last term. But what it's really enabled us to do is have options and go to that three at the back when necessary. And I think Wanyama actually has got significantly better in the second half of this season. And it was just incredible to see him dominate the midfield against Manchester United yesterday. And frankly, what was more impressive than anything for me about the game was Jose turned up, I feel like, knowing they were going to lose, and every single player on their team knew they were going to lose, and they knew they were playing against a better side. Now, I know, you know, you can say they're in the Europa League final, so they weren't playing their strongest team, but, you know, the team was still pretty strong. I mean, if you take away the right back, who's only played once before and was bizarrely asked to man-mark Christian Eriksen, and which Christian Eriksen then just made him look like a child. Apart from that, you know, they're all internationals. You know, to a man, they've mostly probably got, you know, as a team, I'm sure they had more caps on that pitch than we did internationally. So, you know, it was just a dominating performance. And I do think, especially over the last 4 or 5 months, teams have just come to White Hart Lane knowing they were going to lose. Like all those sides who other clubs like Liverpool have really suffered against, like the kind of lower teams, your Bournemouths, your Watfords, etc. They've just come over and got rolled over 4-0. And United didn't seem that much better than those teams yesterday, I didn't think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I mean, coming to you, Crackers, I like Barnaby says there, for me, United sat so deep, so compact. Even at 2-0, there wasn't much of an ambition to get forward. Could you work it out? Because I think our minds were so focused on what was becoming afterwards, we kind of lost the sense of the occasion of the game itself. Could you work out just how poor United were?
Did we actually play yesterday? We did, didn't we? Yeah. It was, as you say, it was bizarre. The game was actually just a blur. But you know, from the bits, the standout bits, I thought Kane was absolutely immense yesterday. He was everywhere. I mean, that game was his everything yesterday. He was determined to just, you know, make that last game at the Lane stand out. Ali and the fullbacks as well for us were superb. But yeah, they were terrible yesterday, Man U, to be honest. They just offered up nothing. And when Yama getting that goal after 5 minutes, I mean, Man U had barely got the bus parked in front of their goal and we got one up, and you know, they hadn't even got the handbrake on and we were one up. It was just, and that, I think that really helped because but that still didn't even really tempt them out in any great numbers to come and have a go. The only player that stood out for me was from them was Rooney. Yeah. Who just seemed to really want it, and everybody else, it was literally, you know, either the flip flops on or looking forward to their final, and that was it. It was they literally just came along to be patsies for the day, really, and they got steamrolled.
Yeah, it's funny, Rooney, because he was persistently fouling all day. I mean, he seemed that you always felt he could have had an impact on the game. Maybe lucky in some quarters down the pitch. Coming to you, Chris, we've just mentioned there, Crackers mentioned Harry Kane. I mean, this is a staggering stat from my perspective. His goal against Man United means he's now scored against every Premier League team he's faced, bar Cardiff. And when you think about the amount of Premier League teams that is just ridiculous, isn't it?
Unbelievable. And the first player since Jimmy Greaves to get over 20 goals for 3 consecutive seasons. And again, this takes me back to how special this season has been. We've been beating club and individual records that were set in the 1960s. And that is something that impressed me yesterday. We were talking about all week, people were saying, as fans, we were saying, we can't let the occasion get the better of us. There's a very important game here. And as fans, we all let the occasion get the better of us, because I haven't watched the match back yet and I barely remember it. It didn't feel like a match was taking place. It was all about the occasion, and that could have filtered through to the players, because those players did get wrapped up in a lot of media duties last week. A lot of stuff that the club were doing in the end about the occasion. You know, for many months the club said we're not really going to mark it. It's not really that we're leaving anywhere. We're redeveloping, and although they're sticking to that line, last week the players were all, you know, pulled into this kind of nostalgia fest, but they did not let it get the better of them on the day. They went out, and we've seen so many Tottenham teams in the past obviously tail off at the end of the season or find the perfect excuse to let an occasion get the better of them. Well, you know, they went out there yesterday and really steamrolled Man U. It should have been more than 2-1. And yeah, the mentality of people like Harry Kane and Dele Alli and every single player in that team, really, and it all goes back to Pochettino. I think so many of these players are the kind of players that I've seen us sign over the last 25, 30 years and could easily be 6 or 7 out of 10 sort of players, but they're all playing 9 or 10 out of 10 players, because Pochettino has got the best out of every single member of that starting 11. They all play pretty much to their full potential all the time, and it's like something I've never seen from. It's so un-Tottenham like. It's hard to comprehend.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, I think you made the point at the start of the show, Chris, that, I mean, it's the kind of game that you would argue that 2-3 years back, without a Pochettino in place, on a last game where there is that little bit of added pressure to go out on a high, Spurs would lose. And it just shows you just how much this manager, I mean, I don't want to say, he is unbelievably, for me, I've said on previous shows, he's the glue to this squad. We have to keep hold of him. We have to move hell and earth to make sure this man is in place to take us in to the new stadium. I want to come to you, Jace. Harry Kane, we've just mentioned, last ever goal scorer in a North London derby, as well as scoring the winner in the last ever goal at White Hart Lane. You just can't put a price on this guy, can you, Jace? Harry Kane. We've spoken about him so much on this show, but you can't not speak about him, can you? Because he just, every week, the consistency of the lad can't go unnoticed, can it?
I mean, we've said it, haven't we, time and time again. The consistency is excellent. The 3 years now, I've always called him a one-decade wonder, and he just proves it time and time again, doesn't he? And it's interesting comparison. I was talking to somebody about the difference, say, between him and Rashford, and I think there probably is more natural ability to Rashford, and Rashford does have that degree of pace, but Kane, it just the sheer volume of goals that he scores is astonishing, really. And I think when he first came in the team, I don't think any of us thought we'd be 3 years down the line, 3 years down the line, having seen him do it 3 times. But he just proves people wrong time and time again. And we've had that jibe, hasn't he? He doesn't do it in the big games, but he scores against Chelsea at Wembley, he scores in the derby, he scores against them. And as you said, he's now scored against everyone other than Cardiff. So, and don't forget, he's also scored against Tottenham a few times as well, hasn't he? He had 3 own goals in amongst that lot. So,
unfortunately.
And actually, Cracker's just talking about Rooney there. I think that got lost yesterday, that Rooney actually became the highest opposing goal scorer at White Hart Lane with 7 on his own. So, he's a bloke that
he does.
He has, and he's a bloke that's always said, isn't it? It's his favourite ground to play on is White Hart Lane. So, it's not been his best year, but a little bit of credit to him as yesterday as well.
Yeah, really amazing. And coming to you, back to you, Barnaby, about the game, another guy that has really stepped up this season is Christian Eriksen. 12 goals, 21 assists for the season. The most assists and goals he's ever contributed in a single season. I mean, again, what do you make of this guy and how much he's improved, I would say, from March onwards?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me about Christian Eriksen, actually, because earlier in the season, kind of back end of last year, he was getting quite a lot of stick from Spurs fans who are calling for him to be dropped. And I just think it's I know it's the fickle nature of football supporters. I understand that, and
we are the ficklest, Barnaby. We are the ficklest.
Yeah, and no, I do understand that, but class is permanent, and that guy makes us tick. And even on the days where he's not at his best, which means he's not, giving an assist or scoring a goal, his work rate is second to none. And name me another player of his creative standard, a playmaker who works as hard as he does in terms of sprints and ground covered, and playing the Pochettino way. Is so rare to get a player like that I was absolutely amazed when he was getting abuse earlier in the season. And you're right, then second half of the season he's just gone from strength to strength. And as soon as he starts getting his free kick boots back on, he can go up from kind of 10 to 15, 16, 17 goals a season, I'm sure of it.
Just on that, Rick, I think it's a bit harsh to say from March, because I think from the moment he scored at Stamford Bridge, which was, middle of November, he then scored 2 against Swansea. I think he scored, didn't he, against Hull, and got 2 assists against Hull. He was excellent over that Christmas period. I think the big difference was that goal at Chelsea, and OK, we lost that game, but from that moment on, and then also, I mean, in fairness, that first part of the season, you had Kane in and out of the side with his injury, Janssen not quite getting there. Dele Alli wasn't at his fluent best at that stage of the season. So I think, the effort was there, the trying was there, but the whole team wasn't playing particularly well. And yes, that's partly down to him, but if people aren't making the runs, you can't find the little angles for passes. But I think from the middle of November, I think he's been excellent from that moment onwards. It's definitely not since March.
We're going to come back round to you, Crackers. Another player that has stood out yesterday, and also I want to mention another one as well. Both the fullbacks, both started the season as reserve fullbacks in Ben Davies and Kieran Trippier. Again, but these guys throughout the season, the more games they've had, Crackers, they've grown, haven't they?
They have been absolutely terrific, and it's where we may look a little bit short in other departments with Kane when he was out, and Janssen obviously was putting in a shift when he does get on, but just didn't really get those breaks. The fullback positions have just been terrific. Trippier and they've filled in for Rose and Walker brilliantly, and that, I think, again, it just shows you how great Pochettino is, because we've got players like that, but when they come in, they absolutely want to tear it up and make a statement and get in there. Everybody's gagging to get in and play, and so the work that Pochettino must be doing with the squad as well, and having them ready, and them having them mentally ready, and wanting to challenge and wanting to get in, that speaks volumes. You hear about players that, I'm not happy on the bench and needs to move on and blah blah blah, but they all realise that this is a squad, and the squad gets a turn. And when they come in, they hit the ground running. It's just it's fantastic to see. But just one last point on Kane and his goal. It just seemed quite delicious that his last ever goal was actually a tap-in. But what a tap-in. I mean, the deft skill that, like, just to put that little touch on the ball and take it round to Gea. And it was like a tiny little sort of tap-in. And I just feel myself, wonderful. How great, all these people. He's a tap-in penalty merchant. Yeah, well, there's tap-ins and there's tap-ins in there. And I just thought, what a lovely way to wrap it up.
Yeah, it was incredibly special. And coming to you, Chris, I mean, like I say, we've touched on the fullbacks there. Is there anyone you want to highlight, Chris, you haven't spoken about yet that, yesterday stood out for you?
Well, we already have spoken about it, but Wanyama, I just think what an exceptional signing. And you look at the signings we brought in last season, he's the only one that's really truly worked out. I still think there's a lot of potential in Janssen, but signing Wanyama did strengthen us as a team and as a squad, and it's strengthened us in terms of the points we've collected and the fact we finished second instead of third. We have progressed this season, and I think his arrival largely part of that. And yet, talking about the fullbacks, I know someone made the point a weeks back that Walker and Rose have come on leaps and bounds, quite possibly because they've got Davis and Trippier pushing them every day so hard on the training ground. Those guys shouldn't just take credit as being great backups. They've helped the first team thrive in that sense. So there's hardly anyone who's from the core starting team that's let us down this season. It's just been, again, that goes back to the manager, the fact that he motivates every single one of them. They've all bought in to what he wants to do, and we see that pretty much every single match day. There's been very few occasions this whole season, certainly not at the Lane at all, but even at away games, where we feel like we've come away with a performance. We've had a few results we're upset with, but very rarely have we seen a performance that we don't think everyone's been giving their very best. And going back to Eriksen, I think there were some people back in the autumn saying he wasn't trying, wasn't putting the effort in. I never saw that. His performance is dipped, but I don't think it was for lack of effort.
And just, Chris, very quickly, I'm going to ask Barnaby as well in a minute. Obviously, there has been speculation about Kyle Walker's future. You've seen Kieran Trippier, you've seen obviously the progression he's had, having a few more games in the side. Would you be concerned to lose him potentially, Chris? And obviously that's just a hypothetical question because we don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what's going on, but looking at it everything we're reading, everything that seems to be, it looks very much like he's on his way. Yeah. And I think that is a real blow. I think it'll be a real shame to leave him. Yes, we've got a great backup. Yes, we're going to get a lot of money for him, but it will be a real shame to lose him. And my slight concern also is how things can change so quickly in football. I don't want to be pessimistic here, but
as you mean setting a trend, Chris. You mean setting a trend?
Yeah, setting a trend. Yeah. One player goes, and suddenly it's not so hard for another player to say yes to another team. So I'd love to think we can hold on to him, but it doesn't. Everything that we're seeing doesn't look like he's going to be there next season, does it? So that's a bit of a worry. But if it's only to be him that we lose, at least we have Trippier, who's a very capable backup, and I just hope that everyone else continues to buy into Tottenham's progression for at least another season or two. Yeah. See where Pochettino can really take this team.
Yeah, I agree. And just bringing you in, Barnaby, only because I spoke to Jason and Crackers about this last week, what do you read about the Kyle Walker situation? I know you're a huge Pochettino fan in terms of what he's done and revolutionised the club. How do you feel about potentially losing that first, I'd say, the first one really of maybe a group that he'd want to keep hold of?
Yeah, I'm actually not as positive about him leaving as some, because I get the idea that his agent probably fancies a move, and maybe his head has been turned slightly by Pep Guardiola, Man City, etc. But you only have to look back a couple of years to remember that Luka Modric wanted to go to Chelsea too, and they offered 50 million quid for him the year before he went to Real Madrid, and Levy said, no thanks, we're not going to sell to another team in this country. So I just find it so hard to believe that we will sell to one of our rivals, one of our best players, unless it would take, for me, something ridiculous, upwards of like 50 million quid to get him out of there. Considering he signed a new deal, I think a year ago, and that was like a 5-year deal. I just can't. Now, however, if the rumours of a Bayern Munich come in and they offer upwards of 30, 35, and Walker makes it clear to Pochettino that he wants to go, then at that point, I think potentially it could happen. But I just can't see it happening to an English club. I really can't, because Levy's kind of set his marker out on that since Berbatov. The last time that happened was Berbatov, and he said that will not be happening again, and I don't see why that would change right now.
Do you think, Barnaby, just sticking you for 1 second, is it to do with this whole situation about maybe his concentration, or is it to do with the fact that he doesn't really trust that he can play 2 games in a week? Because there's a lot being sprouted about. Or is it, do you think, possibly the player has had his head turned, or is it a combination of things? Because the only reason I ask you this is because when I look at Spurs at the moment, I think, why would you want to leave us? Why would you want to leave us for somewhere else? Everything is on the rise. We've got this brand new stadium. We've got a modern day forward thinking manager. We've got a great squad that everyone is buying into. He's been with us for 8 years. What in his mind would think, do you know what, I want away? Money.
But it's true, he probably looks at Nathaniel Clyne, who might well be on like 100, 110 grand a week, and thinks, well, I'm better than him, I'm number one in the England national team, I should be earning more than he is. And that's fair enough, that's another way of looking at it. However, I just think a lot of this might be Pochettino showing him who's boss. Pochettino was a player. He knows what it's like to have your head turned. He moved from home where he was earning no money to go abroad, play at Paris Saint-Germain. I mean, I know it was before the oil money, but still, he knows what it's about. But he also knows all that stuff that you were saying, that sometimes the grass is always greener, and to act respectfully. And I think, I'm not so sure about that. I know I've seen the table, the stat that shows that it's basically been 1 game Trippier, 1 game Walker, then one after another each time, and that does go with that he can't play 2 games in a week thing. But also, let's face it, every time Trippier's come in, he's done a great job.
Yes. Yep.
And it's like you mentioned earlier, or one of you guys mentioned earlier, they're pushing each other on. All the fullbacks are pushing on, and I'll tell you, the best thing that comes from this Walker situation is that not only Kieran Trippier knows that if he plays well enough, he gets in the first team, but Ben Davies knows that as well. And Danny Rose also knows it. And Danny Rose will now have to work doubly hard to get his place back when he's back from injury, despite the fact we all know that Danny Rose, I think, is the best fullback we've had at the club, certainly in my lifetime.
Yeah, he really has been. We're going to bring you in, Jace. Just going back to the significance of that win yesterday. That's 24 league wins in a season. That hasn't been achieved since 1966-67 by a Spurs side who back then had 42 games in a league season and already conceded 9 at White Hart Lane. I mean, if you're going to leave the old girl, what a way to part.
Yeah, it's just, 14 straight wins at home or whatever it was, wasn't it? 14. I mean, it's the season that we all wanted there. And I mean, I put out a tweet today that a trophy on the top of the cake. The trophy will be the icing on the top of a cake, but that cake's been pretty delicious even without the icing this year, hasn't it? Yeah. I mean, I judge a season by have I really enjoyed the season, and it doesn't always mean a trophy for me, because 2008 we won a trophy, but for much of that season it was horrendous watching. And we beat Arsenal 5-1 in the semi and then beat Chelsea, but those 2 games apart, there was a hell of a lot of dross to live through that season. And yet this year we've had a brilliant season. Every time that we've gone to the lane, we've seen the football we wanted to see. I mean, it's astonishing that Wycombe Wanderers have probably been the hardest team we've had to play against at White Hart Lane this season. Well, other than Liverpool, I suppose
West Ham.
Liverpool,
West Ham,
on that first game.
You would probably say West Ham gave us a game as well. We edged that, but I mean, I agree.
Well, I think West Ham gave us a game because they stopped us playing on the day, whereas Wycombe are the one team that's actually come to White Hart Lane all season, and perhaps along with Liverpool, that have actually played some really good football there. Otherwise, it's just been, as somebody said earlier, it's just like watching a weekly battering of teams. And yesterday was the same. I mean, 2-1 flattered Man United yesterday. At half-time alone, I think a 3-goal margin of victory yesterday would have been a much truer reflection of the score.
Yeah, and coming to you, Crackers, just reflecting, if we can, on that ceremony. I know you said your words, it was like a Hollywood movie. Anyone you wished was there that wasn't there, Crackers, in your opinion? Anyone that, felt could have been there? There was a great little chant going around for Paul Gascoigne. Apart from that?
The big gap, the big Steve Perriman-shaped hole in the day. And, as you know, I do the Legends Night, so I speak to Steve quite often. I spoke to him during the week, and they had their playoff game against Carlisle, because he's director of football at Exeter now. Right. And so they were involved in that. And, he's a decent, honourable man. He's got a job to do at Exeter, so he had to go off and do that. He said he was really sad to miss it, but if you're still working in football, then that's what you have to do. But not to see Steve there yesterday was a bit upsetting, really. It would have been lovely if he could have been there, but it's understandable why he wasn't. It's what a servant he was to the club. But no, other than that, Paul Gascoigne obviously has got his reasons why he can't be there, and but other than that, I thought it was a really sort of decent lineup with somebody from every era. There was a few patches around the 90s and early 2000s. Maybe not so much, when you see like people like Cliffy and Terry Dyson come out.
Stefan Dalmat, you mean?
Well, when we're winning out Stephen Carr, I was going to say, good God, it does remind you, doesn't it? It's funny. He did score an absolute pile drive against Man United, but
what I was really pleased about, amongst many other things, was the reaction that some of the players who left under a bit of a cloud still got. And Stephen Carr and Dimitar Berbatov both got really good reactions. I was really pleased about that.
Yeah, I agree. Berbatov, what a player. For me, still probably arguably, I know we had Bale here, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone play the game at his pace the way he used to. Just unbelievable footballer, unbelievable.
His touch was the best touch I've ever seen.
It was just like Velcro, unbelievable. Chris, coming to you, just finally on the wrap-up of White Hart Lane. Everything I know you said earlier, it was everything you hoped it would be.
Pretty much everything was fitting. So many of the guys who helped me write a love for the lane were there in that Legends ceremony. Terry Dyson there, Mickey Hazard there, Alan Mullery coming on, Darren Anderton. It was a shame, Steve Perryman had perfect reasons not to be able to be there, as did Chris Hughton. I think Gazza came out and said, he's got to continue with his recovery. He couldn't be there. I'm not sure why Jurgen Klinsmann couldn't come out. I'm sure he had a perfectly good reason. It was a shame not to see him there. One of my favourite bits of the pitch invasion, by the way, was I spotted in the corner people doing the Klinsmann dive celebration in exactly the same place that Klinsmann did it in his home debut when he scored that amazing overhead kick goal against Everton. So it was great to see people doing their own dives in the exact same spot. No, the emotion really got to me. I welled up a few times in that ceremony. But at bizarre moments too, I welled up when Eric Torsted came on, because he was the first kind of keeper when I was a Spurs fan when I was very young that I watched, and I remember getting the goalkeeper's kit for Christmas and playing in the garden. I think that's another part of the emotion of the occasion, remembering all the times, all the different people you've been to the lane with over the years, and all the different players you've seen, and seeing those people, whatever heights they reach. You're quite right. I was quite surprised to see Stephen Carr, not because he was a very good player.
Yeah.
But you're right. Stephen Carr did leave under a bit of a cloud. He said a few things after he left as well, didn't he? And everyone obviously understandably got a great reception. It was a real shame that some real true legends weren't able to make it, but I'm sure they all had very good reasons that they weren't able to be there. But it was just a really, really classy send off. And a few people have been saying, well, you're only moving next door, but that just isn't the point. It's not going to be. It's not going to be the lane. It's not going to be. It's going to be called something different. It's going to feel very, very different. And anyway, who doesn't like the chance to look back and wallow in some great moments? And that yesterday was just the perfect opportunity to do that. Obviously,
it was. I think that's the perfect time, guys. We're going to go for a very quick break, and then we're going to take a host of questions for tonight's panel. Hi guys, welcome back to the e-Spurs podcast. As always, we ask you to get your questions into us on a weekly basis. You can do that by tweeting our Twitter account of @D_Spurs, leaving your question with the hashtag eSpursPod. So let's go first. We're going to start with you tonight, Crackers. We've got a question here from Harry Charalambosh that has Spur92, who says, how do we emotionally come back from this to get ourselves ready for Wembley? As fans, any coping mechanism?
It's very difficult to do, because as a team, obviously they have Pochettino as their focal point, and somebody that gathers the team and brings them down and brings them up and sort of sets the tempo for their emotions. As a fan base, we don't have such a thing. So it's really difficult. The last few times we've played at Wembley, we've actually played really well. I thought we played well against Chelsea in the semi-final, but unfortunately got beat. It's going to take a few games. I think it's just one of those things we've got to bite down on and get used to. First few games it's going to be difficult, but if the club can move the season tickets en masse and in block, so you've got familiar people around you, and almost transfer that bottom tier of Wembley and make that like the lane. So everybody was in the Park Lane and season tickets, they're all one end, and the Paxton and the West and the East stands. Get that little bit of familiarity going, get a little corner like blocks 30, 31, 32 singing. Just build that little bit of atmosphere. But there's no easy way to do this. And I think what will help if we go there, maybe thump a couple of teams.
We need that fast start, don't we, there, Crackers? We need to kind of get a win on the ball. And I know it sounds, I don't want to kind of tempt fate, but if we can get a kind of, I don't mean an easy team, but a Watford or a Bournemouth at home and steamroller them at Wembley, that might just be the kind of, that kickstart, that incentive we need to really start strong there.
Yeah, it'll be a bit of a catalyst, and get a couple of wins under our belt, get rid of this silly hoodoo thing that seems to be going round, that we're no good there and we're going to really struggle. But we're just going to have to adapt, and a bit of transition. It will be exactly the same when we go to our own stadium as well. It won't feel like home to start with, but let's get in there, bed in, couple of good wins, a little bit of a singing section starting up that should spread round the ground, and we can go from there. But listen, we've all got social media now, so there's nothing wrong with a few people maybe throwing up a few ideas of things to do. The trust can come in and maybe get involved and put the word out there. And if between us all we can get word round and get a little bit of something going, we could use Twitter and Facebook like the team uses Pochettino as that little bit of a focal point to maybe all communicate to each other and get a little bit of something going.
Yeah, well, they certainly listened to you yesterday, Crackers, about the ticker tape. I think they definitely they must have cottoned on what you said.
I think they did, yeah. I mean, where I was in the north, there was loads of ticker tape went up at the start of the game, and then, of course, Mr. Levy came in and completely trumped me with his great big cannons all around the edge of the pitch. It was like my social media campaign to get people doing a bit of ticker tape, and he came in and just blew that straight out of the water, and fair play to him.
That one thing to remember about Wembley next year, and I'm looking forward to it. I just think, get on with it. It's pointless moaning about it.
Yeah.
But we all want that quick win. But of course, what may well happen is that Charity Shield game may well come up first, because obviously if Arsenal lose to them on the 27th, then the Charity Shield will be between Chelsea and Tottenham.
Yeah.
And so, if we lose that Charity Shield, the first game in there will be a negative feeling, and that will start that whole thing of, there you go, Wembley still cursed. Tottenham have already lost at Wembley and they haven't even started their fixtures there this year. Whereas if you could win that Charity Shield, just, all right, it's not a major trophy in the true sense of the word, but to see a Spurs player go up those stairs and lift a piece of silverware, however insignificant it is, would just be a great start to giving us Wembley. So that Charity Shield could be hugely important to the season.
Yeah, and coming to you, Barnaby, just very on this Wembley debate, haven't had your kind of theory on it yet, first time on the pod. I know you've always been of the mantra that Pochettino, if there's someone that can change the mentality, change the philosophy, it's him. Do you think he can with this whole Wembley situation? Because there's no bones about it. We played superbly against Chelsea in that cup semi-final. Can he change it for you over that course of a season?
Yeah, I don't think he would accept anything else. He's so driven, he's so ambitious, and he has got the ear of all of those players. And even taking back what we were talking about before, I think another reason why it seems unlikely to me that people would leave is they want to grow with him. They know they've got their best chance of winning things and doing well is with Pochettino, because he's the best young manager around. Like I said, I just can't see it being anything but successful at Wembley. Now, listen, is it White Hart Lane? Is it as small and tight and atmospheric in that sense? No, but also this is going to be our only shot to watch Spurs with 80,000 Spurs fans there even when we move into our new place, it's going to be 20,000 less. So if we do get a couple of early wins under our belt, stop the press talking about it, stop the opposition fans talking about it, then there's no reason for me why we can't make it into a fortress just like we made White Hart Lane into a fortress. It's just about kind of perception, I think, and making sure that when those players step on the turf there, they believe that they know it better, and they have memories, and kind of it almost becomes muscle memory as to how to be in the right positions and set up and score goals at that great ground.
Yeah, I agree. And final word with you, Chris, on this question.
Yeah, I'm not really looking forward to Wembley because I don't think it's not an easy ground to create a good atmosphere at. And I don't just say that having watched Tottenham play there a lot of times. I've watched many games there, many different teams, cup finals, playoff finals. It's a hard stadium to create a good atmosphere in. I also think that the way we play under Pochettino is suited to a smaller pitch, and it's going to be a bigger pitch there. But this was the best place for us to go. I'd much rather be going to Wembley than Milton Keynes. I'm sure that we are still going to do very well in our home fixtures next year. I think it's going to be hard going to not lose a single game, which we've managed to do this year. I think that's unlikely, but I think we're still going to do well there. I think the great idea there from Crackers that people do need to hopefully sit with their friends, sit in the big groups, and find ideas to generate an atmosphere, because it is something that people really struggle with at Wembley. The other thing that is obviously going to be the case, there are going to be a lot of casual observers. To fill 90,000, for every league fixture, you're going to have football tourists. You're going to have people who are just coming to see a Premier League game, and that's fine. That's all well and good. But with that, you do get a lot of move. I've said this before. You've always got people moving at Wembley. You've got people going to the bar early, coming back from the bar early. You've got so many corporate people who are there more for the event than really the result. You've got people going to the toilet all the time, people getting up and sitting down all the time, and that also gets in the way of generating a good atmosphere.
And let's not forget, Chris, very quickly, Chris, on that, also a huge, obviously, the away allocation goes up as well.
Yeah, of course it does. But yeah, we're moving into a bigger stadium as well, and that's going to have a bigger pitch on White Hart Lane, so it's going to happen. Let's all make the best of it, and I couldn't think that we've got a better manager to ensure that we do make the best of it.
Amen. And the next question of the night is going to come round to you, Crackers. We've got a question here from Paul Mansfield, at Paul Mansfield, who says, will top four be good enough next season, or will that still be a good season for us, or is it essential that we win some silverware? What do you stand at, Crackers? I mean, Potter's turned us into genuine title contenders, not just competing for Champions League each year, but a title in 2 years. Where do you stand on this question?
Here comes the great generational divide. The millennials, bless them, will all like it's top four in Champions League and la la la. But I was brought up really on a diet of FA Cup and Ricky Villa making solo runs, and I can't see a reason why we can't make top four, which I still believe at this stage is overachieving for a club of our size and budget. Because, I know we're going to 90,000 seats at Wembley, but that takes a while for that sort of revenue streams to generate, and we've got the stadium to pay for. So what we do within our revenue constraints is absolutely phenomenal. Pound for pound, we've been the best performing team this season. So I can't see a reason though why we can't put a cup in the cabinet, a League Cup or an FA Cup, just something. So there's that focal point of a cup and a bit and an achievement, and make top four. But if we make top four again next season, then that's brilliant. I think, to be honest, it's once we get into the new stadium and bills have been paid and we have got the money there, then we do need to push on from there. But at the moment, for the next 3 or 4 seasons, maybe, if we're making top four, that would do for me. I know there'll be people shuffling a little bit uncomfortably, saying we're not really kicking on, but and until that money's in the bank to be able to bring in some real stellar signings that are ready to go, not just youngsters that have come through and thankfully made it like Ali. That will do for me.
Fair enough. And Barnaby, where do you stand on this whole debate about top four trophies?
I think it's kind of two separate things. I can totally understand why you mentioned that it seems to be a generational shift. But certainly what I'd say is, when you watch the Champions League on a Tuesday and Wednesday and you're not in it, you're pretty bloody jealous. And also, you can guarantee that players in the summer are thinking, are you in the Champions League when you're deciding whether to go between a Spurs or another club? And I also think, and I got shot down a bit on this on Twitter recently, I also think when they're looking around at players this summer, would it not excite some of those players to be playing in front of 90,000 people every other week at Wembley? It would if I were a player anyway. So
I agree.
I think all of that, I do think the Champions League is important, and in terms of keeping our players, our young, talented players, away from the kind of the sniffing big clubs. But also, I also understand that trophy feeling and needing that. And my earliest memory watching Spurs was '87 losing to Coventry in the final, and then my earliest happy memory was the '91 Cup final. So I want a trophy, and in a way, and it's a bit weird, but I feel like a great season next season, if we can't win the league, might actually be to win a trophy, ideally the FA Cup, if we're not going to win the league or the Champions League, and then finish. If we can't finish top four, then finish outside of the Europa League places as well. So when we go into the new stadium, we can keep our players, and we can have a real tilt at the Championship, whilst all the rest are struggling around Europe and getting injured. Because that's definitely why Chelsea won the league this year. We'd absolutely have won the league if Chelsea were in the Champions League. I'm sure of it.
The only thing with that, Barnaby, mate, is that don't forget, if you do win a trophy, you'd be in Europe anyway, even if you finish 15th in the league.
Very good point. Very good.
So,
I'm just testing you on that. Well spotted.
But no, I'm with Barnaby, Jace. I agree with him that I think we had some questions last week that said if Spurs weren't in Europe, it may very well be a different story, but obviously we'll never know. Yeah. What do you reckon, Jace? I know we've had this debate long-standing with you about top four and the trophy. I know you've been a man of your word and said that for you want to have that regular Champions League football. And bringing that into occasion now, Jace, the question I next want to ask you is a question around players. And Dave Ellis does say, who should we be targeting this summer? Should we be going for Premier League experience? Should we be going for players, I don't know, the calibre of Damari Gray? Burnley's Keane as defensive coach for Alderweireld. What kind of players should we be targeting, Jace?
Well, I think Damari Gray looks quite an exciting talent, but incredibly erratic, and is perhaps a player that will develop over time. I'm not so sure that he's a player that I don't think we want to be developing too many more players now. Now we've reached the stage. I think you want to buy proven players to come in. I think when I look at perhaps positionally, I don't want to throw names at people because I think we've seen the linked names and we could debate whether they're good enough or not. I think the key area for me is you've got a player like Dembele that is obviously struggling a little bit, and you see that at the moment with injury. Obviously, he can't start games at the moment. He struggles to play 2 in a week. And so the development of Winks has come in, but as each season goes by, you start to worry a little bit long term about Dembele playing twice a week. You've got the situation with Dele Alli suspended for those first 4 Champions League games. So I think a really good, strong central midfield player is essential for us to go and get, and that's why I can understand the link with Barkley. And I think Barkley is much more of a Pochettino player, a player that he still thinks there's room to develop, still has that youth to him, still has the mobility to get around the pitch and press, whereas perhaps an Isco, whilst it's more one that fans would be excited for, I fear that Pochettino would look at him, but I fear that Pochettino would think, do I really want a player that wants to come here and be the superstar? I think Pochettino wants players that he knows buy 100% into the work ethic and everything that he's trying to set up. And you know what? If Pochettino wants that, I'd sooner him go and get Barkley than Isco. Not because I prefer Barkley to Isco as a player, but I think it's Pochettino's right to have the players at that club that he wants and that he feels that can take us to that next level.
I hate to be a bit negative about it, but the reality of those two possibilities is, of course, that Ross Barkley's only got a year left on his deal, and therefore that makes it a signing that Spurs could potentially make now at probably between 20 and 30 million quid.
Yeah. I agree. Coming to you, Chris, I know you do spend some of your time around the training ground. From what you see there, where do you think this is going to lead us towards the summer in terms of potential targets, Chris? Do you see us potentially going out of our way to try and get a proven signing? I mean, Crackers last week said Isco. Or are we looking more realistic at players that may have that year and a half left to run their contract where you may be able to get them for a cut price deal? What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't like to pretend I don't have a source there who's going to let me in on things, but the Ross Barkley thing does make a lot of sense to me, and there's a lot of strength, seems to be a lot of strength in that rumour, and he does seem to be the sort of player that I could imagine thriving under Pochettino. And as I've said before, the fact the players that he has developed, the fact that he has improved Rose and Walker and Eriksen and Dembele, and the fact that I don't think Kane would be what he was under any other manager. I'm not sure that Ali would have arrived for £5 million and played pretty much every single Premier League game in his very first season. When we signed him, I imagined he'd play here and there. But because of Pochettino and the way he was able to develop him and the faith that he had in him, he's now one of the best players in the country already. I could see Pochettino having a similar effect on Barkley's game, and that's something I'd like to see happen. Whether it will, I'm not sure. I can't see it's going to be very different from the last few years. I don't think there's going to be an awful lot of activity for Tottenham because we are hamstrung by building this huge stadium. The price seems to go up and up and up. Every time you read it, it seems to be a different figure. It started out at 400 million. Now you're reading like 750, 800 million to get the stadium completed. And it's kind of come at the very worst time. I'd love the stadium to have been built before Pochettino arrived or be coming up 5 years down the line. It's almost like the worst possible time for this to be happening. But anyway, I'm going to try not to be pessimistic because I keep leering towards pessimism.
I think if anyone will know, Chris, being honest though, Pochettino, he's probably the best man you want taking you into the stadium, isn't he? Because he just seems to, the fans absolutely adore him. His name was sung so loud yesterday. If you didn't know we loved him before, God, he knows after yesterday. I want to come on to you, Crackers. I know you threw that name at us last week of Isco. We've had a couple of names batted around to us on social media. Crackers, very quickly, Rooney, Carrick. What do you think? These guys, to me, they look like they may have passed their sell-by date. I just can't see how they would get into a Pochettino team. I know they're winners in their own right. Crackers, very quickly on those guys, what do you think?
My dad said to me about 6 months, I'd like to see Rooney come to Spurs. I think we need an older, wiser head in the team. And I laughed at him. I think the thing with Rooney is I think he'd come with the right attitude, and I think he would absolutely buy into what Pochettino's trying to do. Whether he's physically up to it, I think his attitude and mentally, he'd be fantastic. Whether he could cope physically is another matter. Plus, his wage demands would be absolutely astronomical because the Chinese would just come in and be offering him crazy money to go out there. So he'd want to be getting somewhere near that. I don't think we're the type of club that would meet those demands unless it was somebody absolutely intergalactic, stellar, above him. Where you've got a brand that you could market as well with shirts and things like that. It's trying to find that right balance between that older player that will come in and not want to be a superstar, would knuckle down, would be, a real asset, but also that, for his experience, but also as a player. That's why I mentioned Isco. I'd get the feeling that he would come in and he would buy into Pochettino. I think he would be very similar to the way that Ibrahimovic went into Man U. He was sensational for him this season. He could have just come in and lit a cigar and just straight round. But he was fantastic for him until that injury. That's the type of player I think we need. We don't know. None of us know Isco personally. He might be utterly brilliant, professional, and want to come in and do that. He may be looking for a pension, so only Pochettino's going to know that when he speaks to him. If he goes and has a look at him.
Yeah, difficult to know. Let's move it on. Let's look to Leicester then on Thursday. Let's come to you first, Barnaby. What are they going to pose for us? I mean, they've pretty much now mid-table. They've secured Premier League safety. Obviously, there's a little bit of banter between the two sets of fans last season with them stopping us winning the league. What's your take on this one?
I think the players will be up for this one, actually. I really do. And I think the fact that there's nothing riding on it is going to help us more than it's going to help them. And I think it's a nice pitch there. It's a night game. I can see us absolutely turning them over quite easily, actually. I think it could be 3-0. And I think it's a good opportunity for them to lay some ghosts to rest, some demons to rest from last season. It was a difficult end, wasn't it? And I just think there's a lot. I just see the spine of our side is kind of full of winners and leaders now, not necessarily winners of trophies, but I mean players who have learned from their experiences and are just so strong. I just see the likes of Alderweireld and Dyer just really getting in the changing room before and telling the boys how important it is to keep it going, win the rest of the games, get as many points as possible, turn Leicester over on the way so we can put that to bed, and then go into next season feeling completely confident.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that about winners, Barnaby, because, I mean, we've only lost 4 games this season. Again, the question would have been asked about going into that Man United game. Can Spurs pick themselves up after a really disappointing defeat? And again, we've done it. Again, we've shown that we're... Arguably, what's been Pochettino's biggest critic is that he ends his seasons quite poorly. Coming to you, Jace, he's shown a different side to him at the moment, Pochettino. There's 2 games to go, but we haven't seen that. I mean, dare I say, with 2 games to go, that collapse that there was in his previous couple of seasons, and even at his last season at Southampton, there wasn't that kind of dip. He has somehow, whatever it's been, whether it's the training sessions, he's turned it around. What do you make going into this Leicester game?
Well, I think, probably part of that is he's learning about himself as well, that you can't push double training sessions right the way through seasons and things. So I think that there's probably a little bit of that, a little bit more experience that he's picked up. And people have to remember that, he hasn't won the titles that some of those other managers have done. So he's learning and getting more experience at handling those situations himself. I think Leicester are in good form at home. I think they've won all 5 under Shakespeare, and they're obviously a different proposition now to what they would have been, 2 months or so ago. But I think it is a good game to have. I mean, we're now in a situation of nothing riding on the game, and Leicester have got nothing riding on it. So it is the traditional beach, flip-flops on the beach type fixture that the media would build it. But I think the fact that it is Leicester and that they did hurt us last year, and it will get rammed down our throat. We'll get the it's happened again Tottenham Hotspur, but wouldn't you sooner have it happened again than their season? But it will get thrown at us, and I think Pochettino will sort that with the players and say, look, come here, give a performance, and we just can't let that season drop. Even now, though, there's nothing to play for, and I think that mentality that he's slowly installing in them, you'll see come out. So I hope we can go to Leicester and get that right. Before I'm not so sure I'll go 3-0, but I do expect us to go to Leicester and get something. That's for sure.
Okay, we're going to do predictions in a second. I'm going to come to you, Crackers. What do you make of this one then? Leicester are going to be up for it, aren't they? The sets of fans will be.
Yeah, that still seems to be a little bit under their skin. But we were singing about them and trying to make a bit of a chase of it. So, I think they'll sort of be reminding their players during this week on social media, no doubt. But they'd like to see them turn us over. Again, there's always been a little bit of needle there. I don't know why. I don't know where it goes back to. But like points have been made before. We seem to have been made of stronger stuff this season. We learned from last season. We've grown up from it. Not just the players, but Pochettino as well. He's an incredibly young manager, and he's still learning. He seems to have shaken Pochettino. That is a little bit of that Bielsa legacy off the man he learned from, whose teams were notorious to fall away at the end of the seasons like we did. But this, as points been made, this season we've not fallen away like that, and he won't let the players ease up, and we'll go up there and give it everything. And I can't see no reason why we can't come away with a win. The margin of victory, who knows? 3-0 would be lovely, but I'd take another little 1-0 and just put more points on the board and just establish us and our capabilities even more.
Yeah, and coming to you, Chris, I might be wrong, but I can't remember them losing at home yet under Shakespeare. I think their form's been quite good over there. What have you made of their little upturn in form since that man just come in? Since Ranieri's gone, Shakespeare's in, more of a gone back to the system they know. The results have been there, haven't they?
I've got to say, I mean, I'm amazed really what Leicester and Chelsea have got away with over the last 2 seasons. Because I'm saying this is looking at the game as a fan, from a fan's perspective, but it looked to me like Chelsea got their manager sacked last year, almost deliberately, that the players just stopped playing for Mourinho, and it looked very much to me like Leicester did that to Ranieri this season. And if they did that, then what a lack of respect that is to fans who go every single week and expect the best from their team. For Chelsea to have won the league by 8 points and then finished, 9th in the end last year, and then win the league again this year. Okay, they've added some players, but and for Leicester to win the league and then couldn't buy a win, could they? And then they turned it around and won pretty much every game under Shakespeare. It's amazing. It tells you a lot about player power, and it again tells you how hard it must be to be a manager in this day and age, and to keep everyone on board, and how quickly things can change if one or two players begin to kind of lose their faith in the manager. But yeah, I mean, putting all of that to one side, what I think is good about this game, it could be a completely dead game, but it's nice that there is that bit of a rivalry that has been generated out of last season, and I'm really looking forward to this fixture. As everyone has said, I don't expect there to be a let-up in intensity from us. I know Pochettino is well aware of this criticism that his teams notoriously fall away at the end of the season. I think he's fed up being asked about it. I think he'll be determined that his team go out there with the right message. He was furious, obviously, last season how it ended at Newcastle. And I think a lot of the players will still have that in their minds and want to make sure that they finish this season on a high and keep going right to the 96th minute or whatever it is at Hull on Sunday. I really hope and expect that intensity is still going to be there for these last two games. I'm looking forward to this one. I think because of the rivalry from last year, Leicester will be giving it a good go as well. I don't think they'll have switched off yet. They're doing ever so well under Shakespeare. So yeah, it should be a nice game under the lights at the King Power.
Okay, well, let's stick with you, Chris. What's your prediction? What are you going to go for?
I'm going to go for 2-1 to Tottenham.
2-1 to Tottenham, okay, fair enough. And Barnaby, you sticking with your 3-0?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with my 3-0, absolutely. And I think it's an interesting situation that Leicester have got themselves in, because I'm pretty sure that their chairman will want to get a big name manager in to in his eyes, as for the brand and to push them on to the next level again, etc. But I think if they do that, they're in serious danger of having another appalling season next season, because it seems like the players kind of manage themselves. You know what I mean? It's like they choose whether to play for Ranieri or not. And then Shakespeare comes in, and I'm pretty sure they just kind of like, we'll go back, we'll play long ball into the channels for Vardy and just live off the scraps of that. And so it's an interesting summer for them, I think. But what does it matter anyway? Yeah,
it makes it even more frustrating though, Barney, when you think in terms of that title, how they won it. It's just unbelievable. Really, really is. Fairy tale FC, mate. Fairy tale FC. Indeed. Crackers, coming to you then. Let's have your prediction. What are you going for?
I'm going to go 2-1 to Spurs.
Jace, coming to you finally. What are you going to go for, Jace?
If we pick the side that I hope we do, and that means we take it seriously, probably die our own run. What I meant is whether he looks at it and thinks, oh, all right, I'll give Nkudu a game, or I'll give Marcus Edwards a spot, or something like, if he did something strange like that and brings in Vincent Janssen instead of Harry Kane or something, whereas Kane's going for the golden boot, isn't he? Yep. So I think, if he picks a proper side, then I think we'll go there and get the 2-1 win. But I mean, I'm watching Chelsea-Watford here, and you see how Chelsea have made about 3 or 4 changes tonight, and they're 3-3 at home to Watford with 10 minutes left. And so that shows you if you take liberties in a Premier League game, it can still bite you, can't it? Yeah. So hopefully we'll go there, pick a proper team, keep that intensity up, and if we do that, I think we'll win it. If we don't, and we're slightly off it, Leicester are a side that play particularly at home with that intensity, and if we do pick a few strange players, then we'll go there and get beaten. So hopefully we do the right thing.
It has echoes this game, and that sounds really silly what I'm going to say, maybe, of that Burnley game. After we qualified for the Champions League, we played the Burnley. Do you remember? We did rest a host of players where the game was meaningless for us. Yes, we've consolidated second now, but we still want to end that season really positive, don't we, Jason? We want to kind of end this, really kind of establishing
Absolutely.
that. We haven't.
No, you want to target that 86 points, but I mean, take the game seriously and approach it properly, and I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, well, I think obviously that's we've got the whole game. Then we've got to go a trip off to Hong Kong, so I'm sure the players are looking forward to that one. I've got to say, guys, Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here again. And can I just remind anyone, if you want to wallow in a bit more White Hart Lane nostalgia, my book, A Love for the Lane, is available on Amazon with interviews with many of our great players over the years, talking about their favourite games ever played there.
Yeah, a must buy, guys. You have to get that. Barnaby, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
No problem. Thanks a lot. Yeah, lovely to be on, and look forward to more success with Spurs going into next season, guys.
Fingers crossed. Thank you so much. And Crackers, thank you. Second week in a row, Crackers. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much. And I'm also writing a book this week. I'm doing a guide to the Europa League for Arsenal and how to get to places like Metalist Kharkiv and Azerbaijan and correct spellings and local customs. So that'll be available available in no good bookshops at all for them to buy.
Brilliant. And James, thank you as always.
No problem, mate. And good night from a stormy hell of a thunderstorm going on out here in Bangkok. So sometimes you Brits have it nice with the weather more than us.
Jakes, have you got a rainbow there?
No, not quite the one Bill's tears created yesterday, mate.
Dear. What a way to end it. Guys, thank you so much. And as always, as we roll on to Thursday's game against Leicester, come on you Spurs!
We can hear them singing on the terraces. We can hear